Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 11 of Two Minds, One Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about something I would say is technically considered taboo by a lot of people. It's something that isn't often discussed. We noticed that in life, we tend to celebrate life a lot, especially new life,
Living?
I mean, when, for example, somebody gets pregnant,
Oh,
you do a
okay.
gender reveal party.
Oh,
You have a party for the gender reveal. You then have a party to shower them with gifts in preparation for the baby to be born. And then after the baby's born, every year after that, we celebrate another year of living, aka your birthday, right? And this is common practice in most of the world,
okay.
right? However, we never really celebrate death, and it's more of this thing that we all know is inevitable, and this thing that we know is going to happen at some point, someday, sometime, somehow, somewhere, but we don't acknowledge it. We kind of just brush it off to the corner.
So the taboo subject you're talking about is death
Yes.
itself.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was listening to this podcast. They were talking about it, and they talked about how we look at death in this negative, connotation, negative, just leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Most people are scared of death. Most people are uncomfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a pleasant thing to experience in being the person affected, so the person passing away, or the person dealing with a loved one, a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a friend, an acquaintance, a coworker passing away, right? So it's something that is very much not discussed, and it's pushed to the side. Why? Because it has so many questions, and a lot of those questions make us feel uncomfortable, right? Like,
So there's no answer to them?
yeah, because there is no concrete answer to them. There's a lot of concrete answers to how to live life. Many, I would say billions of examples of other humans living life. But death it's the point of no return. It's the end. There's no information beyond,
Yeah, as far as we know, it is the end.
It is the end, right? Obviously there are other people that have had cases where they die and they're clinically considered dead for 3 minutes and then are resuscitated and they see, their life flash before their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very common thing, right? And so it's been so common, in fact, that I believe that it is widely considered to be true that your life does flash before your eyes, but not in the sense that we expect or we see in the movies or in TV shows, where it's not like a highlight reel of all your greatest accomplishments and all your best times. It's more of a random assortment of memories and fragments of things that you experienced, right? It is not chronologically in order, and it is not, a lot of the times it feels like some of the memories that you notice are not things that you could have experienced. I know that there was a man who experienced death, and he essentially was clinically dead. His heart stopped for 3 minutes in the ambulance, right?
For how long?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Past the 90 seconds for brain damage, right?
Yeah.
So, 3 minutes clinically dead, and he said that his life did flash before his eyes. However, he saw these memories of like a wide staircase and a cat, and he's like, I've never lived anywhere with the white staircase or a cat, to my knowledge. And so after his near-death experience, he spoke with his mother. His mother told him that when he was 14 months old, They lived in an apartment building with white stairs, and their neighbor had a cat. And so the memory that he saw of his life flashing before his eyes was a memory from being 14 months old. So to say that his brain somehow captured that memory and decided that that was the point to pull it up, I don't know why. But they do make a case that, your life flashing before your eyes, seeing a loved one, seeing a white light, are all common things that people that have experienced near-death experiences see. And we can't prove if it's reality in the sense of this is a fact, right? Science can't prove it. Or if it's just your brain releasing insane amounts of chemicals to ease you into that forever good night. It is a mystery, and it will remain a mystery, likely for the rest of human time, as long as we humans are alive, because science can only tell you what happens the here and the now. Science,
up until the point of
death,
complete death,
right? In most people, in most religions, and most just even atheists believe in, or not atheists, but agnostic, believe in a soul or a will, right? That you can impose upon the universe, that you can will yourself to the finish line, that you can will, yourself to become great, that you can will yourself to stay awake, or whatever, and impose your metaphysical, non-realistic power upon this universe that we have no control over. Right? And of course, that will, or soul, as some people like to call it, is something that science has yet to prove. And it is something that we don't know if science can, or if it will ever prove it. How
would you be able to prove it?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
But it's true. A lot of cultures do believe in the soul. I know. It seems like, at least in Japan, might be that a lot of. So I know there's like I might not pronounce the word correctly, but they're called Sunugamis or
Shinigamis?
No, not Shinigamis. Surugamis or something. Essentially, what it means, I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, is an object that has been in the family for generations or has gone through like this evil or like really amazing events gains a soul. Like that's something that I've noticed that they there's a lot of couple mangas, animes, and other things about those.
Yes,
and stories of that.
It's definitely a cultural thing,
right?
We can see it all across the world.
But isn't there also cultures that celebrate death?
Yes, there are cultures that celebrate death, and I was going to touch upon that in the sense that there are many cultures that do celebrate death. Funny enough, death in cultures has given us more understanding of our human ancestors than living or how they lived. So a lot of archaeologists and anthropologists look at how previous humans celebrated and what they did or didn't do with their dead, because it tells you about their culture, it tells you about their people. So it's interesting that something that is so negative can provide so much information, right? And as we stated, it is known that many people believe in the soul. We have Christians, Catholics, Jewish, Japanese, Chinese.
I think Japanese fall between Buddhist and Catholic.
I don't know, but even Buddhists.
Oh no!
Even Hindus like that believe in. Right. It is something that a lot of cultures share. And why? I think it's just because it's one of those common human, not traits, but conclusions that a lot of people come to, right?
Mm-hmm.
How a lot of cultures come to similar conclusions, even though they're not in contact with each other, across the world, right? Like, for example, living near water is important,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
But it's interesting to see how religions, interpret death and what they do about death. Because, like, we have, like, the mummies, the ancient Egyptians who celebrated death as a righteous passage of, shedding their mortal flesh and going to, wherever they were going. I don't know, a better place where they can, and they send them off with all of their, their prized possessions, and they mummify them, and et cetera, right? And then there's, like, in the complete opposite, there's, like, the Buddhists that originate in India that are inherently trying to reach that enlightenment that you reach in death, but in life, right? So their whole thing, which is why they relinquish a lot of their worldly possessions, and they meditate, and they
train,
but they essentially reflect a lot, right? And so it's interesting to see how death, being such a fundamental concept of our world, can shape your cultures and can roughly shape your life, because a lot of people do things because they don't want to die.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like, even if they don't want to admit it, you work a job so you can get food and water, so you can drink food and you can drink water, so you don't die from dehydration, you don't die from starvation, right? You buy a house, you buy somewhere to live, you find somewhere to live, shelter, so you don't die from the elements. Like, it is engraved in us. It is a motivating factor, and not only that, but it is a factor that inherently gives your life meaning to an extent. Because if you had infinite time and you would never die, then your choices wouldn't matter as heavily. We've discussed this previously.
Well, yeah, because then you'd have time to do
everything.
Every single choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned religion, and it seems from all the religions that I know of, right? They all have the same similar fact of that after death there's something.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
that could be just a coping mechanism.
No, that's why I was about to say that could either be a coping mechanism, because there's the side of we created and wrote religions as a copingsism to be able to handle just the fact of believing in a higher power makes surviving for some easier to keep pushing,
yes,
through the harshness of life.
Removes the burden of needing to understand that it gives a different meaning than just everything is.
Because it is. Yeah. And then if you look at the other side of it, if it wasn't man written, and if it was by some higher being, right, then theoretically there would be something to look for after death, right? In that sense.
It depends.
No. It depends, right, on the religion and
but no, even if you're talking about this hypothetical scenario, it depends on what kind of higher being, right?
Yeah.
So, science fiction has definitely depicted many different cases where your god could be just some fourth, fifth dimensional being that isn't really your god.
Or it could just be a higher evolution.
Your creator. It's your creator, but it's not a god in the sense of how we believe a god that is omnipotent and omniscient and all powerful, and of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could just be, we're an ant farm on some X-dimensional child's playroom decoration, right?
I mean, look at Rick and Morty. Yeah, Rick and Morty. He's a dimension in his
teenyverse and his miniverse, and his tinyverse. Yeah. So there's that, right? But you did touch about something that I do find interesting. Religion, for the most part, is something that is as diverse as there are people in the world, right? All around the world, there's different religions. There is no right religion and there is no wrong religion, right? As they all are beliefs. Some people may state them to be facts, right? But from our perspective, they are all beliefs. But what we do notice across all religions and all time is that a lot of, especially the older religions, right? Like you look at like the Greece, the Romans, right? The Romans, right?
They're Catholic.
Right. They weren't not Catholic.
The Romans were Catholic.
Then why do they have gods? The Romans became Catholic when the Catholic Church became more involved in the state affairs.
Let me research it. Okay, continue.
But what we notice is that a lot of religions are used, especially old ones, to explain why the world is the way it is.
Okay. So the ancient Romans were Roman Catholic. At least after Christianity was legalized.
See? Why do you think there's Roman gods? If they're Catholic, they can't have Roman gods. Like Neptune.
Okay, so long pre-Christian Christianity was a largely unified faith, at least in theory, while it indeed became purified religion for the Roman Empire in 313 with the Edict of Milan, and Christianity would be defining. Yeah.
See, I told you. They had, before they were Christian, they took over Greece or Greek, right, and adopted, essentially copy pasted their religion into their fold, right. So a lot of older religions, even Christianity, is used
what were they before that?
But it doesn't fucking matter. The point is, trying to get across is that people use religion throughout history to help explain the unknown, and especially in a world where we lacked a lot of information, the unknown was abundant and everywhere, right? You have gods of thunder. Why? Because we have lightning. Gods of water and rain, and gods of the harvest. Why? Because we farm, we need food, right? And so it's interesting to see how these religions not only pop up, but how it is almost engraved in human nature that there needs to be a higher power, right? And it wasn't until the 1800s, right, or the late 1800s, right, where we saw philosophers question the idea of, and we saw science blooming in its entirely, and starting to really take root and not be considered so woo-woo, but more readily adopted and taught, etc. Right? That we noticed that, at least philosophers noticed that, there might not need to be a higher power out there. It might have been a coping mechanism to, guide us in the right direction, right? And now I'm not saying anything that religions say are inherently bad, or that religion itself is inherently bad, or one religion is better than the other. I do not want to get it twisted. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that from a certain perspective, it can be seen that these are guidelines and rules to how to live a life that isn't inherently bad, right? There's a lot of, people who like to misinterpret and use the Bible as saying that, gay marriage is wrong because Adam and Eve, or, same-sex marriage is bad, because of the Catholic Church or whatever, right? But I don't think it's meant to be held in such a black or white consensus. I think as they are, texts, and as, religions are, essentially retellings
that don't exist anymore.
They're just retellings of other, stories. They leave much room for interpretation, right? And the interpretation is the morals and ideals that you can, gain from them and adopt into your life to do well. right? But speaking of the 1800s, this was right around the time when the idea of nihilism came up, right? So people were starting to lose faith in religion, and so the common logical, thought process is, well, if there is no God, then there must be no meaning to anything. And if there is no meaning to anything, then why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I care about living if there is no paradise, if there is no purpose, if there is no fulfillment, if it's all just right? And so it sparked up a lot of interesting conversations about not only nihilism, right, which is like the everything's going to go bad and nothing matters, we're just a speck in the dirt, right? And around this time, you got to keep in mind too that we were realizing that we are not the center of the universe. We are on a rock, a small rock, floating around a ball of fire, swarming around in the vastness of space. In all direction we see other balls of fire. Because by that point,
we're learning the mechanisms
of the universe, right? And so people started to question. And so many different, philosophical beliefs and, debates happened under this, right? But something I did want to bring into question, not into question, but into light, was that if people find themselves thinking in that sense of, of a nihilistic perspective of, well, none of this matters because, nothing matters and blah, blah, blah. And so why do anything? Nothing matters, right?
I mean, if you want to go that nothing matters, you can always find a reason why nothing matters.
Exactly. So, right. I know that was, it is definitely a common logical, ending point for a lot of people when they, come to that realization, right? When they feel like they can no longer believe in a religion because it's been disproven by X, Y, Z, their faith has been shaken, etc. Right? And there is a brighter side to nihilism that is less known. It is called optimistic nihilism. Right? Now, optimistic nihilism is still nihilism, unfortunately, right? For people who are believing in that, but it is the understanding that if nothing matters, the pressure, the stress that you're feeling to perform, to do well, to get that raise, to be a good father, right? It does matter because you want it to matter, but you understand that in the grand scheme of the universe, it is not the end all be all. And so you give yourself the ability to essentially exhale.
Yeah,
right? And for some people, I'm not saying and I'm not advocating for this, right? But I'm just saying that this is something that some people, that are very pessimistic, that are nihilists could adopt, right? Understand that if nothing matters, then everything matters because
I know what you're talking about, and to me, I've always felt like those people that nothing matters, or because nothing matters, it all matters, right?
Yeah, if everything equals zero, all zeros are equal.
Yeah, and it also seems like if you let the fact that we live in a universe and we're a speck in the time of said universe and said planet that we live on as well, right? Point of a second in its existence as of now, then but that's out of your control.
Exactly.
Why? Why? It's like death. It's out of your control. I've always felt in this sense that death is out of your control in the sense of when it's your time to die and you're dying, like
a lot of people would argue that death is one of the few things you can control.
Yeah, to an extent. Okay, to an extent.
The two logics,
right?
The two logical ends of nihilism, right, is nothing matters. So why am I alive? I should just end it. And the other end is nothing matters. So fuck it. Keep going.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the two logical conclusions when taking that specific philosophical standpoint to its logical end. Right? But I understand what you're saying. Right? Don't worry about what you can't control. And for most people, you know, you're not going to control when you die unless you're purposefully putting yourself in situations that are
the likelihood of you dying.
Yes, exactly. Right. And you know, and unfortunately the percentage rate of you dying, so I actually found this out recently. Do you know what the statistical likelihood of what is the most guaranteed thing to kill you out of percentage wise?
Heart disease is the thing that kills most people in the world.
Kills the most people in the world.
Number one killer, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. We're talking about facts here. Yes, heart disease is, scientifically, the thing that kills most people. Yeah. It kills the most people in the world. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. But the thing that is most likely probable to kill you, different than the thing that kills the most people, is you.
Is yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, because you put yourself in situations.
You control where you are, who you talk to, what you do, when you do it, why you do it. Exactly. So in the statistical probability, you are the person that is most likely to lead to your own death. Right? And that includes, the increasing volume in cases of mental health, of anxiety, depression, things of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting because, we say, don't worry about what you can't control, but death to yourself, a lot of times to others, depending on your position, is something you can't control, right? Whether you should or shouldn't do it is another thing, right? Yes. But yes, I do fundamentally agree with you in your statement of do not worry about things that are out of your control. Yeah. Right? Especially if you're not trying to die, if you're trying to live, don't worry about it, right?
Yeah. If you're not going out of your way to do things that can kill you.
But once again, when you tell people to do that, we're falling back to the same thing that I said at the beginning. Most people don't worry about it, and they forget about it, push it to the side.
Mm-hmm. No, right? I know.
So it isn't really addressing that issue, but it's hard. It's not an easy issue to address. It's not an easy thing to stare down in the face.
But I also feel because they push it off to the side, sometimes their decisions get them a little closer to it. In a sense, not because they're not.
As in the sense that they don't acknowledge it, or they kind of forget that it's inevitable, or they...
Yes.
They think that life is just going to last forever?
Yeah.
In the moment?
Because they're so scared of death, they're just like... You know what I mean? And... That's... Okay. That's what you basically just said what I was going to say. It's inevitable, right? And for me, when I came to the realization that it was inevitable, that's when I said, well, there's no point in me worrying about it. I'm going to do what I can to live for as long as possible. I'm not going to not risk at times, right? Mm-hmm. I will risk if I feel the reward and the risk is worth, right? And the likelihood of me actually dying is low.
Yeah.
Right? Or within acceptable boundaries for myself.
Yeah. Within acceptable risk tolerance.
Exactly. For myself. Now, I know for a long time, I remember you were very afraid of death.
Yeah.
When you were younger.
We cover this.
Yes. Now, we should cover it a little bit deeper. How did you eventually get over said fear of death? Because I remember we would talk about it, and you did not want to bring it up. Zero. Right? What led you to that? To no longer fear it in that sense? or let me rephrase it. How led you to where you are now? Because I don't know if you
I
still fear it
relinquished
or
control.
not. You relinquish control.
Yeah.
Okay, but
I
how
said,
did you come to the conclusion? Is what I'm trying to get you to explain. Like, was it an event, a train of thought, events that
many
happened?
years of thinking and being tired of the fact that every time I thought about it, it led to an existential dread, a feeling of just fear, I guess, of the unknown. So the biggest thing for me, why I've always been like not afraid of death, but it's always been something that's like, damn, that sucks, um, is the lack of awareness. So let me divert here for a little bit. In philosophy, how do you know that you're alive? How do you know that you are you? Right? It comes back to the famous words, I think, therefore I am.
Okay.
Which is speaking to consciousness. Right? And so, life is interesting because we don't have a definition for life. We have a definition for what life does, but not for what life is.
Okay.
Right? So, I think, therefore I am. And so that, you take that and you're alive because you have thoughts and you have experiences and you wake up and you eat and you do all the things. You do the things that life does, that life is.
Yeah,
right?
That you're alive.
That you're alive.
Okay.
Part of that is thinking. And so the thing that always scared me the most was not thinking. If I'm not thinking, I'm not alive. And if I'm not alive, I'm no longer me.
Okay.
Do you understand where you understand how this train is going? For many years, it was something that I pondered often in the headspace. I can't give you an exact day, time, place.
No, I understand.
Or conversation, or thing, or magical moment of kumbaya, of oh my god, right? I can't give you none of that. What I can tell you is how I think about it and how I view it now. For me, it was the understanding that death is a requirement for living. And not in the truest sense of, duh, in order to be born, once you're born, you must die. No, I don't mean that. What I mean it in the sense of is, what gives your life meaning? What?
So you're going back to the infinite versus the finite.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yes. Essentially, yes.
Yes.
I am going back to the infinite amount of time versus finite amount of time.
Yes.
So in my conclusion, right? In my head, what gives your life meaning is death. And it's the fact that you are going to die. It's the fact that you don't know when. It's the fact that you have a lot of times no control in it, right? And so the time you have now in the present should be used doing things that you want to do and moving towards goals that you want to accomplish, things you wish to experience, places you want to be the person you want to be. Why? Because you're not going to have enough time to do it all, unfortunately. But if you strive to do it all, you'll get as far as you can, and whenever your time comes. And then when that time does come and you're on your deathbed reflecting, you can say that you died doing what you wanted to do and leaving, all you had on the table. So the fact that you don't have time to do everything, right, because of death, is what gives your life meaning, in my perspective, in my opinion, right? Once again, someone else could have a different perspective. But to me, And coming to that realization and perspective shift upon death is what helped me overcome and no longer be riddled with that crippling fear of the unknown, and coming to embrace the fact that it is what it is. I was lucky enough to have been born into the circumstances that I was. And if I spend my whole life just worried about how it's going to end, it is doing a disservice to life. It is doing a disservice to to me, and all the things and all the beautiful things that life has to offer. Be it good or bad, soul crushing, heartbreaking, all of that.
Yeah.
That is how I jumped that hurdle, right? I can tell you that still to this day that, I'll be driving, I'll be at work, and the idea pops up going, oh yeah, when you die, it's just nothing. Just brainwaves gone. Nothing. And it's like, damn, that fucking sucks. Oh well, it's just a pause. It's an acceptance of the reality, but instead of letting that reality stop me in my tracks, I just continue to appreciate the time that I am here. Because for all I know, I could wake up tomorrow, be diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and be given 2 days to live.
Right. Be the most exciting 2 days.
I could be driving to work tomorrow. Somebody runs a red light, plows into me, and I die on impact. Like, I don't have tomorrow guaranteed. As cliche as it sounds, and as standard of live today like you have no tomorrow. Like every guru and every fix your life and every millionaire blah blah blah. Right? Unfortunately, with the large enough sample size, there's a reason why they say it.
There's a reason.
There is a reason. The reason is because, unfortunately, they're right. You need to live your life like tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And so if you find yourself waking up for too many days going, man, this life sucks, there needs to be a change.
Your life's gonna suck.
One of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs is actually, he was asked in an interview. He said, Steve, how do you know what you're doing is right? And he gave one of my favorite answers. And he said, well, I wake up in the morning and I walk over to the mirror every day and I look at myself and I ask myself, am I content with what I'm doing and what I've been doing right now? And if the answer is yes, and I'm being 100% honest with myself, truthful. If the answer is yes, I keep doing it. And if the answer is no for too many days in a row, there's a change that needs to happen. And so, I agree. If you find yourself in a situation where you wake up and you dread going to work, or you dread going to doing this and that, right? Too many days in a row, there is some change that needs to happen. That change may be a change of job. It may be a change of perspective. It may be a change in your life outside of that thing that's, causing you to, but a change nonetheless.
No, a change of something. True.
But yeah, that, to answer your question, that's how I got over that hurdle. Now that's what worked for me. It may not work for other people.
No, I mean, to each your own. I mean, for me, when you mentioned at the end that I don't even remember the exact words you said. Horrible memory. For me was, it's out of my control. I remember now. Where you said you want to be able to do everything or as much of what you want to do in life while you're alive, right? For me, the first one, I found out that death was guaranteed for everybody. It freaked me out because, oh man, there's so many things I want to do, but I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know how long, maybe a few weeks or a couple months, I woke up and I said, well, then I just got to do everything before I die.
Yeah, and that's,
I just said to myself, if I'm going to die, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. Then the one thing I can do is make sure that I do everything that I want to do before I die.
Yeah.
That's it. It was
a lot of the
it was
times,
freeing.
a lot of the times I've noticed, personally, a lot of the answers for life's hardest questions are relatively simple. Unfortunately, coming to the simple conclusion is hard
I've come to notice that.
because we love to overcomplicate our lives, right? And that's where, you know, a lot of the pitfalls fall. A lot
I
of
think
the anxiety of
mm-hmm.
a
I
lot
think
of. Sorry, go ahead.
no, continue.
I said no. It's just a lot of what people find themselves, beating themselves up over. I need to be better. This and that.
Mm-hmm.
Is not only expectations placed upon oneself, but understanding or misunderstanding that, for lack of a better term, it's more important than it is.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I said optimistic nihilism can help some people. When you understand that the world isn't on your shoulders, and that after you make your mistake, the world will continue to revolve, the sun will continue to rise, things will continue to happen. It frees people and allows them to do things less pent up. But that's for some people, right?
Yeah. So, that reminded me of something that happened today. I had a family member ask me to do a favor for another family member. Which said family member I'm not really a fan of.
Okay.
They haven't been real per se family-ish towards us, right? And then so that family member tells me, never mind on the favor, they figured it out. And then they also backed out of another commitment that they had gave to this family member, right? And that caused a lot of grief and panic in said family member. And so they asked me, what do we do? And I mean, I guarantee the answer is simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, but it's difficult. It's not that easy. It is that easy, but the completion of the task is not simple and not easy.
Yeah.
It is difficult and it is daunting because you got to do the boring steps.
You just got to do the work.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
And I've come to realize that almost any solution to a problem you have is usually simple, right? It's usually the simplest one. It's just the solution itself is simple and you know what it is, and most people don't want to do it because it's difficult in the process of doing it, or the process is lengthy or boring,
or it's hard to swallow,
or it's hard to swallow. Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to just be truthful with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That it is the best decision, and that the only person in your way is you. Yes. From X decision or Y decision.
Yep.
Right. It is simple. Like you've said before, life's simple. You're born, you live, and you die. Two of those things you don't have control over. when you're born, how you're born, where you're born to, etc.
When you die.
When you die, right? To an extent, we did cover that you do have control over that. But over a natural death, which is not one done by one's own hand, you don't have control over that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you should take solace in the fact that you do have control of one of them. Arguably,
the longest one.
The longest one. Arguably, the one that is the most fulfilling, in my sense, in my opinion, living. So, live your life however you want to live it, but do it with purpose. Do it with understanding that you want to achieve and see everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
do it like you said, with purpose, and learn to enjoy the boring hard work.
I would say learn to enjoy all aspects, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
I had a discussion with a coworker recently got their heart broken. I told them, view it from this perspective. Yes, you had an amazing time with this person, in a relationship, etc. And you felt all these good things during your time with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your time came to an end, right? Albeit more sooner than you would have liked, right? But take solace in the fact that you were able to experience that.
Experience the positive
emotions you did. And the negative emotions you're experiencing now are just a reinforcement of how good those good feelings were, right? Mm-hmm. It is a natural just up and down.
Yeah. Oh, and any lessons you might have learned along the way.
Yeah, and I told them any lessons, and take solace in the fact that you know that you left things on good terms, in the sense of you did not wrong the person. You were a good partner, right? And you were the right person for them at the right time, and vice versa, right? Things don't always work out, but take solace in the fact that you were able to experience that, and you had the opportunity to experience that, both the high and the low, right? Because there can be no high without living the low.
Yep.
Right? So, with that, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and end the episode. If you enjoyed it, leave us a like, comment, tell us what your greatest fear is, tell us what your perspective on death is.
Yeah, let us know what you think on death.
But yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.